I think it's no surprise that I sort of came out of Game of Thrones and had a kind of a breakdown where it all got too much and had my rock bottom moment. I was playing a character who was the epitome of goodness and honesty and truth. And in my life, I didn't feel like that at all. I sort of collapsed and told people around me what was going on. Then finally took some action. I went to a rehab in America. When I was at rehab, they identified me as being ADD.
How do you find being a dad?
I think I'm a good dad because I'm sober.
Today's guest is a loving father, but a pretty talented actor, and my bromance buddy. He also happens to be ADHD. Born Christopher and nicknamed Kit, or to some of you, the King in the North. Having Kit join us was an absolute privilege. We chat about how his brain works, his struggles with addiction, and some of his decompression tricks. Let's get into it. Let's see how great minds think differently. Kit, great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you haven't done a podcast before.
No, this is my first ever podcast. So this could be a complete disaster. I have no idea what I'm doing. You've got a novice in the chair.
There are no lines here, I guess. There's no script.
I generally have less of a problem with that than some other actors. I quite like the sound of my own voice, even though I do struggle with articulating what I think at times.
So I've heard you say that acting's a bit like getting paid to show off.
It's the lines get blurred, don't they? Because you get paid as an actor to essentially to become a character and to entertain people. But then, as you quickly realise when you become an actor, if you have some success, there's all sorts of other stuff you get paid for, which you never really signed off on. How
do you deal with that?
In the past,
yeah,
I haven't dealt with it very well. I sort of, I kind of have a great affection now towards young actors that I see in press and publicity who have, landed in a kind of hit show or whatever, and they're kind of doing the rounds of magazine shoots and the dreaded sort of print interviews and things, because you can almost see in those photos the anxiety on their faces.
Okay.
Trying to look really cool, but behind the eyes there's just utter terror. And that's kind of how I felt when I got caught up in all of that in my 20s, of like trying to project this image of utter sophistication and coolness about what I was doing, but genuinely being sort of terrified about everything.
I guess, what did you do with that fear? Like, how do you cope with that? How do you get better at dealing with that?
I mean, I had coping mechanisms, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which weren't very healthy. I love the past. I love that everything that the life I've had. It's been incredible and very fascinating and interesting, going through a kind of journey that I did relatively young. You do find that you're caught up in something that is in control of you.
Yeah.
And now I'm a bit older now. I'm kind of in my mid-30s.
Bit
wiser. Got kids.
Yes.
And I have a bit of perspective on it all, I think. I mean, I can feel my 45-year-old self screaming at me, like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was in that process of, I don't know, something like this seemingly every other day, some interview, some photo shoot, something, I couldn't really see outside of that box, whereas now I feel like I can a bit.
I presume you had no idea what Game of Thrones was going to become, or what you were kind of signing up for in terms of what sounds like that hamster wheel kind of, wow, oh my God, this is happening again. Oh, okay.
I think I did.
Okay.
I knew. I've been asked that a number of times over my career. Like, well, did you know what you're getting? No, I had no idea. Whereas my 21-year-old self, who getting into that, thought, yes, this is going to be the biggest show on earth, and I am going to be a massive star in it. Because I was 21 and I was full of beans.
Yes.
I was like, I'm the big dog.
Yeah.
Of course this is going to work out. And amazingly it did. But now looking back, I was sort of like, yeah, that was kind of a 1 in a billion chance that thing worked. Yeah. And it did. Yeah.
Why do you think you and acting make sense?
Well, I think it really, like everything, it kind of boils down to nurture, which is that I was the second child and I wanted my mum's attention.
Mm-hmm.
And my mum was a playwright and very creative, and I wanted to do everything mum did, I think, to try and get her attention. And I think naturally inside myself I was a bit of a show off. Maybe there's a nicer word for show off.
Were you confident?
I think I was quite a confident kid, yeah. But wrapped up in a whole load of neuroses. I think I enjoyed attention.
Mm.
So naturally, when I was in high school and got up on stage for the first time and everyone went, I was like, this is great. I'll do more of this.
Yeah.
And also found that I really enjoyed it. I don't think it was initially about wanting to be someone else or take on a character, or I think it was the enjoyment of the hit. You know, like the rush of the nerves of getting up on stage, of people looking at you, people applauding, people appreciating something in a very kind of vocal and palpable way, was a very kind of addictive and fascinating sort of experience for a young person.
So then how does that feel, I guess, when you do a film or a TV show where you're not on stage, it's not live, there isn't that instant gratification, as it were?
Well, I got into acting for the love of the live experience, I guess, and theatre, and that's where I started. I went to drama school in the UK, which is very much angled towards that. So if you're supremely lucky, you find, as an actor, you find most of your work comes from film, where everyone's deadly silent, and things move on, and there's not a huge amount of pats on the back. I think the difference is that I then got into a bad habit, which I still kind of have, of looking for the applaud afterwards. Like when the film comes out, searching for how is it received? You know, did people like it? What are they saying about me?
Yeah.
And that is a dangerous rabbit hole to fall down, because inevitably you find all of the bad stuff that people are saying as well as the nice stuff.
What's the best thing that you remember that someone said about a performance of yours? And what's the worst thing?
Oh, I seem to have blissfully tuned out specifics. I think some actors do memorise their worst review, but I can't. It's maybe a good sign that I can't think of what that is.
Yes.
But I can't also think of what the nicest thing
Yeah.
is anyone's ever said. I tell you what I have always hated is that I've always hated when, sometimes even seemingly when I've got a good review of something, I've got to stop reading them. It is sort of like cloaked in something about my appearance, I think.
Okay.
Like Game of Thrones hunk Kit Harington. Oh, for fuck's sake. So demeaning.
I remember when someone said seed lip tasted like witch's piss. That was a real highlight. Yeah.
So you do remember them?
I remember the bad ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I remember the bad ones because they kind of keep me grounded, I guess, in a sense of kind of going, oh, the people that said it'll never sell a bottle and that it was the worst idea ever and that I was completely deluded. Not in a, I mean, I'm pretty competitive, but not in a like, hey, ha, 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 told you so, proved you wrong. More just in a, I don't know, it's easy, on a totally different scale, totally different level to you, but to, yeah, just sort of drink the Kool-Aid and kind of...
Do you take that personally? Because like, obviously as an actor, like when you get a review, it feels very personal because it's you playing a character, but it's also you. It's a part of you. Yep. Do you feel that about Seedlip, for example, that it's part of you, and therefore if you're insulting that, then it's like a personal slight?
Yes and no. I think I built a pretty thick skin early on because I needed to, because there were as many people who thought, oh, this is genius, this is amazing, this is going to change drinking, etc. There were also the extremes on the other side of the witch's piss and the people who just didn't think that
it's witch's piss.
Witch's piss.
You sometimes have to hold your hands up and go, it's quite good.
It's quite a good one. I don't know, I think, building a bit of a thick skin to try and separate out what Seedlip, or I guess maybe in your case, separating out the play or the film or the show as a whole versus your individual character. Do you get into your characters?
I'm very British in my approach to acting, which is that I have a very clear line between character and me, which is I don't live in them. I kind of approach like that side of things, of the actual practicality of getting down to my work. I'm at the moment finding quite tricky. I think because I've got multiple things going on and I'm terrible. So I've got kids at home and I can't separate seemingly at the moment my work and my home life. I find it very difficult to do that. So I'll go into a room and I'll start prepping the movie that I'm about to do and trying to learn the lines, and I'll hear something from the other room, and before I know it, I'm caught up in the family stuff. And then before I know it, the whole day's gone. I haven't learned a single line or haven't done any preparatory work. So I at the moment I'm trying to juggle this new life of being a dad of two alongside what has to be, as an actor, quite intensive work on your own to get ready for a job. And I won't lie, it's not going very well. I don't multitask well. I have to be on one thing. And more than that, if there's more than one thing going on in my head, I get overwhelmed. I get incredibly fretty, anxious, and then I have to go take a shower. I literally have to go up.
A shower's a reset for you.
Yeah, I go up, I take a shower, I get in a different set of clothes, and I go and try again. Rose will say, "Just go take a shower," because I'm all over the shop in my head.
At whatever point in the day.
Yeah. At any point in the day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how have you discovered that works?
It's something about starting the day again.
Okay.
It's like, okay, at any point I can start the day again. This has all got on top of me. My head's all over the shop. I'm in 3 different places at once. I can't deal with it. I go into a sort of freeze mode. I go like that. At which point Rose says to go and take a shower, and I go okay, and because it's sort of like my brain short circuits.
Yep.
Because it's sort of, I don't know how to explain it. Sort of get overwhelmed by it all.
Is that overwhelming feeling because there's too much going on, or it's the pressure of one of those things that is happening, or what is that?
I'm not good at delineating.
Wow, you're getting some good words in here, mate. Preparatory.
Saying all the great words wrong. Delineating. I'm not very good at like separating off things.
But you're great at separating your character from yourself.
Yeah, because that's one job.
Okay.
That's in that box.
Yep.
The only example I've got where I got confused between character and me and it was only for a long period of time, I think, was with the Jon Snow stuff, because I was playing a character who was the epitome of goodness and honesty and truth. And in my life, I didn't feel like that at all.
Okay.
People would treat me like the character who was a hero and good. But in my life, personally, I didn't feel like that at all. And that, I think, had some kind of a bit of psychological kind of scarring.
And what was going on that you felt like this?
Well, I mean, I was drinking a lot, effectively. Like I was sort of going through addiction. and everything that entails, and hiding things and all sorts. And so that was the polar opposite of the character I was playing, who couldn't tell a lie, who was goodness personified, who was honesty. And me, Kit, was not that. But I was treated like that because that's who people perceived me to be.
Yeah.
Which you can see how that would kind of, you know.
Do people think you're Jon Snow?
Yeah, of course they do. And they're totally disappointed when you're not. So every interaction you have is there's the kind of, you know, the disappointment just shows in their face immediately the minute you start talking. Like, oh,
because as soon as your accent
you're consistently letting people down.
But then ironically, it sounds like you felt like you were letting yourself down or letting other people down.
Yeah.
Struggling in your personal life.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's no surprise that I sort of came out of Game of Thrones and had a kind of a breakdown where it all got too much and had my rock bottom moment. When I was playing on stage at the time, I was playing an alcoholic.
Okay.
Actually, character and me did get very mixed up at that point in my life. I was very proud of that play, and the character I built. But during that time, I didn't know who I was really.
You were playing an alcoholic, and also stopping drinking.
No, continually drinking while playing an alcoholic. It was at its worst.
Okay.
You know, so it was during that play that I sort of collapsed and told people around me what was going on, and then finally took some action to address it.
What did you do?
Oh, well, I went to a rehab in America, and I tried going to rehab once before, 4 years earlier, and kind of entered the rehab drunk, sobered up in there, and went, oh, fuck this. Oh, no. Not you guys in the circle.
Left.
Oh, no. No, thank you. And I left that pretty quick and said, I'll try and deal with this by myself, which didn't work. After about 4 years. It kind of crumbled, as it does. So this time I was sort of ready and went to rehab in America and took it seriously, realised that my sort of life was hinging on this. My mum used to say, like, you held a glass like it was the most important thing in the room. And that's a hard thing to let go of. Ended up going over there and luckily this time it was the right place at the right time. I managed to kind of forge a new life from there, really.
Yeah, congrats.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's a brave thing to confront yourself, right? And I guess do the work to understand yourself.
Yeah.
What did you learn coming out of that?
Do you know what I learned, which is the most positive thing I kind of have learned, is that I'm much better at being me than I thought I was. And maybe that goes back to the start of our conversation about actually maybe there is more in me that wanted to be an actor because I didn't want to be myself. I was very socially anxious.
Are you still socially anxious?
I am, but I know how to deal with it now.
Okay.
And I think I project some confidence, but I'm walking into a room, a party or whatever, when I was younger. You know, I remember in my like sort of drama school days, I'd be at a party, and even with the alcohol, I would find myself walking out of the room, going and finding a cupboard and standing in the cupboard and just breathing, or hiding under a bed. Yeah. I remember my girlfriend at the time finding me hiding under a bed and like, what are you doing? I was like, I couldn't, it's that short-circuiting thing. It's like
that frozen
freeze moment. And so of course alcohol was like my go-to. It's the only thing that was kind of helping. It's the only thing that meant that I could function socially. The trouble was that then it wasn't just socially, it was alone. You know, I loved nothing more than drinking alone because it took me out of myself, took me out of that headspace, took me out of that anxiety instantly. It was the one thing that could do that. Yeah. So what I learned from rehab and the process of getting sober, which to really kind of get a kind of handle on took about a year of solid work, was that actually I'm much better as a sober person socially. Now I know how to deal with it than I ever kind of thought I was.
Are you a sociable person?
I have always been a social person, but I just the anxiety surrounding a conversation felt like the end of the world if there was a silence.
Okay.
Like it had the same effect of me as if someone was saying there's a nuclear bomb heading to London. Like it would be like if there was a silence, an uncomfortable silence, then it was awful. So
you felt you needed to fill it.
Yeah, so I had to fill it. And to fill it, I had to, or to fill any of those little silences, I had to drink. The similar thing.
How are you with silences now?
Much better.
Should we have a bit of silence?
Yeah, great.
How do you feel?
But this is a planned silence, so it doesn't count.
Hold on a minute.
It's like a meditation.
Can't have any rules around the silence.
It's more that my kind of anxiety around things would be like, say we're in a restaurant and you're speaking a bit loudly. I get incredibly anxious for the table over there, that we're disrupting.
I'm so with you.
Do you know the thing?
I'm so with
like,
you.
If my table's making too much noise,
Yeah.
I'm like, but we're disrupting the other people's experience. And so could you be, and so that sort of thing would get to me. Or if there was the opposite, so our table suddenly descended into silence.
Yeah.
I immediately am up out of there, straight to the loo, breathing. Or when I used to smoke outside, fag. And that's why I got so hooked on cigarettes as well. They were the perfect escape to leave a room,
Totally agree.
have a cigarette, then I can reset, come back in. It's the same as the shower. Reset, come back into the room. Okay, we're all right.
But the thing is that I guess what's common to all of that is that you take some action, right?
Yeah.
So it's not trying to think your way out of it.
Yeah.
It's even not even talking your way out of it. It's actually like physically I have to go and do something.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is the release in whatever way.
Which I think is, I've always had this this restlessness. I got to this podcast about 45 minutes early. I was here like half an hour earlier than you. Just sat there while everyone's set up. Because I woke up at home, I paced the kitchen, having way too much coffee, and then realised, okay, it's we're meant to be here at 9:30 or something. It's 8:30. I know in my head it's only a 10-minute taxi drive, but I'm like, what if the traffic's bad? So I'm here really early. That's all my kind of restlessness.
But it's the anxiety, right? I get the anxiety around noise is a big one for me, regardless of whether it's a restaurant table or sitting down eating or the kids or whatever. And I'm fully aware of what the other table's doing.
Yeah.
Or thinking, or maybe I think I know what they're thinking.
It's the thing about not just being in, this is nice because it's just you and me here.
Yep.
There's those guys over there.
Yeah.
But it's just you and me. Whereas the minute we're in a room with other people, my head is everywhere in the room with that table over there, those people. I find it I have to really train myself to be with this person, this time and space. I think that's made me, in some ways, quite good at it because I force myself to be, because my head wants to go to every other thing in the room at once, I think.
It's why I don't have loads. I'm really conscious of not looking at you and looking at my card, because I'm thinking, Kit will think I'm not listening to him if I don't look at him.
But you're very good. You're very good. I've always noticed this about you. You're very good at eye contact and connecting. You're very intense. Might be I hope you don't mind that word, but you're quite an intense person. You're in.
Yeah, I'm firmly in our conversation.
Yeah,
and I have trained. I like looking at you. I don't really want to look at you in some ways, though, because I'm happier looking off But I think I've learned or trained myself to be like, the respectful thing for you to feel like I care about what you're saying and this conversation is to look at you.
Yeah, you've done the opposite thing of what is comfortable for you as a reaction to that. You're like, no, I must work against the thing that I naturally.
Yeah, I'm probably more comfortable doing. Let's talk a bit about parenting. We're both dads. You've got 2, I've got 3. They're all young. How do you find being a dad?
I'm learning quick fast about parenting. My boy's 2.5, coming up to 3 really, and my little girl is now 4 months. So I'm a very young parent, and they're very young kids, and so I'm learning like he is. So like one day my tendency at the moment, I'm realizing, is to kind of to wind him up like a little clock. Like he's very excitable, so get him really wound up and then set him off.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that might not be very healthy.
Just before bedtime.
Just before bedtime, like, because it gets me excited. So
yes.
I'm trying to pull back on that, and at the same time not make him feel like fun daddy is gone. I think I'm a good dad. I think so far. I think I'm a good dad because I'm sober. I'm present. I'm there. Parenting is tough. There are days you wake up and you're like, okay, right, it's the weekend. It's not a nursery. It's going to be full on. But as a result of not waking up in a blur, I am there and ready for it. I'm very, very grateful that I got sober before being a parent.
What do you like when he hurts himself?
I'm all over him like a rash. Like I'm down on his level, hugs, kissing him. That's the thing I'm looking at the moment as well, not to overthink things, but am I love bombing him too much? Am I like smothering him? I think
it's hard, isn't it, to like.
There's a lot of pressure on parenting now.
I want to tell him I love him all the time.
With the awareness of what we can and do to our children, which I think our parents had less of. You're constantly thinking, am I doing this bit wrong? Am I doing this bit wrong? Am I harming him this way? Was that a trauma? And I think part of it for our generation is actually pulling back from that a little bit, not overthinking things too much, not trying to raise them by the book too much.
Yep.
Like being yourself, as well as knowing that there is such thing as love bombing them or kind of rejecting them or whatever it is. Trying to be a kind of gentle parent, whilst also having some discipline and rules and boundaries. Like all of these things need to be taken into account. But then at the same time, you have to be you. You can't be this kind of manufactured parent.
Yes, the book parent.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you find, or let me start another way. The anxiety I get when I've got all 3 of them and it's only me.
Yeah.
And I do it, and I'm on it, and I'm good, and I keep everybody as happy as I can, and everyone's fed, water, everyone's got what they need. But my God, I am exhausted, and just so anxious.
Yeah,
from start to finish.
Yeah.
How do you find it when it's just you with the 2 of them?
I think it's a lot, right? So I feel that anxiety that you just described. Where parents get into trouble is if they try and hold on to their old lives in some way. I think you have to jump into it 2 feet first and go, this is my life. This is the new thing I've created, and I'm going to leap into that exhaustion.
Yeah.
As much as I can.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to just
embrace it
and go for it. Because if you resist it, it's more tiring in some ways. And just know that your life now is they go to bed, you have dinner and go to bed. Like, that's what I do. Me and Rose have dinner and they're like, do you want to watch something? I'm like, no. And it's straight to bed. We have a natter in bed and that's it.
Yep.
Good night, start again the next day. I think the resentment of being a parent would come if you held on to the life of a person without kids. You are a person with kids now. You have to kind of embrace it.
Which is great. You say that's not a bad thing, right? You're a person with kids. It's a great thing, but it's a responsibility that sometimes I definitely don't feel grown up enough for.
I sometimes don't feel creative enough for it.
Okay.
So I'm in the garden with him. He's got this incredible imagination and he's like making a stick is a dragon or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, should we just collect some sticks for the fire? Like I'm like amazed by his imagination and also kind of upset that mine is gone.
Yeah.
Like, how did you like? And I sometimes feel like I fall down as a parent on that level. Like, I should be more on his. I should let him lead me through his wonderful world
step
and
into
imagination,
his world,
rather than my problem can be that I kind of take control. No, let's go and do this. I have this anxiety as well. So this is a big one. I don't know if you have this. That we're all having fun. It's a fun time. We're having a good time. This is fun. The thing's over. We need to move on to the next thing.
Yes.
Not enjoy. He just wants to enjoy the joke again and again and again. And I'm like, no, it's getting awkward now. This joke is over. We need to and I rush things. I move it on because I'm restless. I'm like, what's the next thing?
Yes.
We've done the dragon stick thing. Now we need to do the next thing.
Yeah.
You know, whereas he's quite content for hours
doing the same thing.
Stick dragon.
Yep.
Like, but I'm like, no, this is getting awkward. It's not getting awkward. It's my kid.
Yeah,
like, but
exactly. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because it rings so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't mind going over and over again. Whereas my wife says sometimes I go in sergeant major mode, she calls it. You know, like, right, no, it's enough of that. Now we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Come on, let's move it. We need to move it along.
Yes, to get to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I don't know what that. I wish I had less of that, but I think that's to do with my anxiety as well, or like my the way my brain works is. No, we need to, get to whatever the next thing is. Otherwise, the world's going to be destroyed. But it is on that level. I think sometimes, like someone once explained to me about addiction, which is that it taps into your monkey brain. So it says to you, if you don't have a drink, you're going to die. It creates the same thing as if you don't have water, you're going to die, which is genuine. If you don't have food, you're going to die. Yep. It taps into that bit of the brain which says, if you don't have this glass of wine, you're going to die.
Catastrophe. And
I think sometimes there's other things that do that. Like if that table over there doesn't quieten down, we're all going to die. If that, it's like it gets to that real basic element of your brain, which is in total fear of something. I think that's kind of what anxiety is.
And then, so when your brain's at its best, when you're in the zone, and what's that like being in your head? What's that like?
Doesn't last long.
Okay.
Like, I was in the zone this morning. I walked out of my house and I was like, it's a rainy day, but I'm really great. Just a natural piece of gratitude came to me, which is that, isn't it wonderful to be on this earth now, here? And then the other bit of my brain jumps in pretty quickly and goes, yeah, but so it's that constant. I find when I'm in the zone, the existential part of my brain goes, yeah, but there's no way up from here, which is a horrible thought. But it does that to me quite quickly of like, well, this is good, but the only way is down. Like, which is...
doesn't get any better than this.
Doesn't get better than this. I find that place of being in my best place a kind of scary place.
Okay.
I've heard other people say that before, but it's like we're out in the park, me, my wife, I imagine it, my now 2 kids, sort of, and it's a sunny day and it's beautiful and everyone's having the most wonderful time. And that it sort of almost gives me more anxiety than the other place, because I'm like, but it doesn't get better than this.
Yeah.
It's a kind of dark thought, but
yeah.
I have to contend with that. That's where my head goes. And that's why I want to move it on to the next thing.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And presumably you want to keep it going.
Yeah. I think that's why I like drinking. Drinking kept it at a kind of solid place of that part of my brain got fulfilled a bit with the alcohol. And now living in the present, dealing with my head can be taxing in that way, if that makes any sense.
So that's when your head is good. What about when you're at your worst? What's
I was always
head?
I was called in my household. I was called the Prince of Darkness.
Okay.
Because I can, when I'm in a mood, which happens a lot less often nowadays. Now I've done a bit of work on myself, I think. But when it happens, I can purely by being in that mood bring the whole room down.
Okay.
I project this kind of dour depression. It doesn't last long, thankfully, and I'm very aware of it. And the trouble is, I say to people, please don't talk to me right now. I just can't deal with anything. I just need to be in this and let it wash over me. But just by being in that state, the whole room kind of feels it. And I'm aware of that. And a little part of me kind of likes it, I think, that I'm having this effect. And so I have to be very aware that that's happening, remove myself from the situation, go through it, call people if I need to call them, talk to people if I need to talk to them, which I don't want to, because I want to isolate in my head and get and move past it. Like, try and sort of not let it affect others too much is the sort of what I want to do is let everyone in the room know things are shit, right?
Yep.
And everyone should know that I'm in a mood.
Yes. Okay.
And everyone should feel it.
Do you point your finger like that?
Yeah, and I want to stay in it for as long as I want to stay in it.
Okay. But we've got to stay too.
Yeah. You got to know that I'm in a bad place. That's what my parents used to call the Prince of Darkness, and it never really went away after teenage years.
Can we talk about labels?
Yeah. You know, I find identifying as an addict and an alcoholic incredibly powerful. It's my first go-to place of not drinking. Is to kind of label myself as that and to know that.
Yep.
Right. So I can't deny the power of identifying and diagnosing something. I was also, you know, we've spoken about this. I was also, when I was at Rehab, they identified me as being ADD. I think some people find it very empowering and useful to have that particular diagnosis label. Mm-hmm. For me, when I got to Rehab and they went, you know, it's almost the first day there, and they went, look, we've assessed you and we think you're ADD. I was like, that's great, but how do I stop drinking?
Sure. Priorities.
Priorities here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't help me with, like, how do I not drink?
Yes.
I think it's interesting, in now I'm able to look at myself a bit more because I'm not clouded in all of the stuff I was clouded in. I can see a bit how my brain works, which I can notice when my brain's a bit, maybe as they were referring to. Mm. But that particular, whatever it was, diagnosis, you know, for me, it's not nowhere near as important as being an alcoholic. Because I think that helps me with my brain more. I'm like, oh, I know how I'm thinking right now because I'm an addict. Because I crave more. Mm. I have this restless anxiety. Mm-hmm. I have this this feeling of having one layer less of skin in the world, this oversensitivity towards things. That label of being an alcoholic is incredibly important to me, because it's changed everything. And it's more than just not drinking now. It's about how I feel about the world, why I feel the way I feel, why I go into that that kind of Prince of Darkness kind of depression I talked about. So if you're talking about how we perceive people in as far as like labels, yeah, it's really important for me.
Ultimately, what I hear from everything that you say and that you've said is you are more aware of how your brain works and how you are and how you react and how you deal with situations than you've ever been, from a self-awareness perspective, which sounds, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Kit, like previous to that, you weren't.
I wasn't, because number one, I was young, and
Yep.
I think people in their 20s, with all due respect, haven't lived enough life to kind of go through some certain moments where they learn about themselves. And number two, you can't learn about yourself properly if you are that befuddled by a substance such as alcohol. You can't step out of those layers of an onion and see yourself. You can't do the work if that's going on. So now, having, been sober a number of years, I really know myself more. I know the processes that are going on. I know that when I slip into a kind of depression, that it is temporary. It's incredibly important to know. People often talk about change or getting to know oneself as an incredibly positive experience, which eventually it is, but it has to be hard won. Like
painful first.
Like good, permanent, well, hopefully permanent, solid change takes a painful experience. I used to feel like this. I used to attach, when I was drinking, the idea of a leopard never changes its spots. And someone once told me, a leopard does change its spots twice in its life. And that meant everything to me. I was like, I can change. It's going to take a momentous effort, but I can change. And that's something I've sort of hung on to, is that analogy.
Yeah, and we can't think the same way forever, right? We're not programmed, or our brains aren't programmed in one way forever.
No.
Switching gears, we asked you, obviously for those listening, you can't see our kind of neuro-spicy cabinet that we're sat here with, but we asked you if you wanted to bring anything to put on our little shelves. Did you bring us anything?
I did. And last night I was thinking, what the hell do I bring? And I was on the phone to Rose actually, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to bring in. And the first place I looked, I found exactly the right thing, which is this Harry Potter Trivial Pursuit.
Wonderful.
And the reason for this is that I used to hate going to bed. I hated it. There was nothing more.
How old are we talking here?
Oh, every from teenager to till I got sober.
Okay.
And the reason I hated it was I hated lying down and dealing with my head, which would just be like, I call it a bag of rabbits. It would just be constant. And I hated that feeling so much that I didn't go to bed. I didn't want to go to bed. And then I started listening to Stephen Fry reading the Harry Potter books every evening. And every evening for the last 4.5 years, I've put my headphones in and I've listened to that. And I know other people do the same thing.
Okay.
And what it does is, I know it so well that it is something like a meditation.
Yeah.
And so now I know Harry Potter so well that you could ask me any question in this box.
Can I?
Go for it. And I will know the answer. But there's some of those are based on the film.
Hey.
And the film doesn't count. So if it's a film question.
Okay, a book question.
Yeah, it's got to be a book question.
Okay. Have you I know there's still,
I promise
still quite
you,
a lot
I
here.
haven't planned this. They're well worn.
Okay, what make and model is Harry's first broom?
It's a Nimbus 2000.
It is a Nimbus 2000. Who buys the Nimbus 2000?
Albus Dumbledore. But it's McGonagall who sends it to.
Yes, very good. What's the name of Hagrid's pet dragon?
Norbert.
Very good. You've passed the test. Thank you very much, Kit.
Thank you, mate. Do I get to put that on the shelf?
Where you can put it?
Right in the middle. In between Tesla and Einstein.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.